Before we look at the mechanical systems of an aircraft, we must evaluate the most critical, complex, and vulnerable component in the hangar: you. Just like the actuators and rivets you inspect, the human brain operates within strict physical limits. This learning system utilizes an information processing model to manage data. It demonstrates how your brain processes the hangar environment through 5 distinct, highly mechanical stages. The first stage is transduction. The environment produces physical energy: light, sound, and heat. The brain only understands electrical energy. Sensory receptors convert this physical energy into electrical impulses. That raw data then enters your sensory stores, which act as an ultra-short-term buffer. The retention here is highly accurate but incredibly brief. Visual memory lasts under half a second. Auditory memory lasts up to 3 seconds. Because you are bombarded with millions of bits of sensory information every second, your brain is hardwired to survive the influx by aggressively filtering out useless data. If you do not consciously direct your attention to a specific sensory input within those mere fractions of a second, that data is permanently deleted from your system. Perfectly healthy sensory organs still fail if the physical environment sabotages the raw data before your brain can even attempt to process it. Look at this acoustic energy diagram. Standing near a running jet engine exposes you to over 115 decibels. This high background noise degrades your hearing's signal-to-noise ratio, physically burying the 50 decibel sound waves of critical verbal warnings. This is the masking effect. When intense noise distorts incoming speech, your brain automatically attempts to fill in the missing audio gaps. It guesses what the person said based on what it expected them to say, creating a false hypothesis that can lead to fatal maintenance mistakes. Your visual data is equally vulnerable to chemical interference. The carbon monoxide from sources like cigarette smoke or engine exhaust binds to your red blood cells, starving your retinal cells of oxygen. This localized hypoxia rapidly destroys the sensitivity of your rods. Simply moving from a brightly lit hangar out onto a dark apron creates a severe har lag. Your cones require 7 minutes to adapt to the dark, while your rods take up to 30 minutes to reach full sensitivity. During that adaptation window, or when surrounded by masking noise, the raw data reaching your brain is so severely degraded that you are functionally blind and deaf to the hazards around you. Because your sensory stores drop data in fractions of a second, your brain relies on attention to act as a strict cognitive filter for the environment. This filtering operates continuously. If you are deeply focused on a task, you ignore the conversations around you. But if someone shouts your name, your attention snaps to them. This is the cocktail party effect, your brain subconsciously sampling background noise for highly relevant cues. Once you direct your attention to a stimulus, your brain applies perception. This is the sophisticated process of assembling raw sensory data into a usable mental representation. Perception relies on expectation bias. This ambiguous shape is interpreted as the letter B when surrounded by letters, but as the number 13 next to numbers. Your brain uses surrounding context to predict the data. Now read the text inside this black triangle. Most technicians quickly scan it and read "a bird in the hand." Look closer. The text actually reads "a bird in the hand." Your perceptual system subconsciously rejected the anomaly because you only saw what you expected to see. When scanning a highly familiar maintenance manual, this biological efficiency turns lethal. Your expectation bias forces you to see the procedure you are used to, causing you to completely miss critical procedure amendments. Once your brain perceives and interprets the sensory data, it generates a course of action based on its internal mental model of the environment. When you successfully synthesize an accurate, up-to-date mental model of the aircraft and your current state, you achieve situation awareness. This schematic visualizes the situation awareness triad. Stage 1 is perceiving the elements in your environment, physically noticing a small pool of fluid accumulating on a support beam. Stage 2 requires comprehending their true technical meaning. You must combine that visual data with technical knowledge to identify that the fluid is skydral, leaking from a cracked pressure line at a specific valve. Stage 3 is the projection of future status. You must use your mental model to predict that if this system is tested, the crack will rupture into a high-pressure spray path. True situation awareness operates strictly as a timeline. If you perceive a defect but cannot project its future catastrophic state, your mental model is incomplete and you are entirely defenseless. All of this conscious processing happens in your short-term or working memory. This acts as your mental workbench, and it possesses a severe biological bottleneck. Human working memory can only store 7 items of information, plus or minus 2. This data remains accessible for only 10 to 20 seconds before it fades. This graphic demonstrates how to artificially expand capacity using a technique called chunking. On the left, a 14-digit number enters the registration funnel. Trying to hold 14 discrete digits in your short-term memory will almost certainly result in a retention error. By grouping those digits into meaningful blocks based on prior experience, like a country code or a network prefix, you reduce 14 distinct items down to just 5 manageable chunks. The data easily bypasses the capacity limit. When information is rehearsed and encoded, it transfers to your long-term memory. Unlike the 10-second bottleneck of working memory, these permanent archives have an effectively unlimited capacity for semantic roles and episodic experiences. When an aircraft maintenance task is repeated extensively, the physical skills embed into your long-term memory as a motor program. An ingrained routine, like safety wiring a bolt, eventually allows you to perform the task automatically. While motor programs reduce cognitive load, they introduce the risk of autopilot errors. Your hands execute the routine while your central decision-maker dangerously wanders. Human working memory is too volatile for aviation. You must actively offload this cognitive burden by writing down exact torque values and progress milestones on physical aides-memoires the moment you perform them. Perception functions as a subjective interpretation of your surroundings. Your brain is consistently vulnerable to deception from simple geometry. This diagram illustrates the Mueller-Lyer illusion. The opposing angles of the fins attached to the lines force you to believe the bottom line is longer. Even when a ruler confirms they are identical, your automatic processing overrides objective data. You still see the illusion. This cognitive vulnerability scales dramatically under environmental pressure. Maintenance routinely requires squeezing into cramped fuel tanks or working at extreme heights on a tail empennage. Standing on an unstable cherry picker triggers a deep biological fear response. That fear diverts your processing power from the task to focus entirely on personal safety. Combining the unreliability of visual estimation with the sensory overload of a harsh environment means you lose the bandwidth to process fine details. You become significantly more likely to miss microscopic defects or take dangerous procedural shortcuts. In April 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 suffered a catastrophic explosive decompression mid-flight, tearing an 18-foot section of the cabin roof completely off the aircraft. The NTSB investigation determined the root cause. The maintenance program failed to detect massive, systemic fatigue cracking and corrosion in the structural lap joints. The inspectors were tasked with visually evaluating thousands of identical rivets. This highly repetitive action induced severe cognitive boredom. As their processing power dropped, expectation bias took over. Because the first few hundred rivets looked intact, their brains assumed all subsequent rivets were fine, physically masking the cracking. These critical inspections were carried out under severe environmental constraints. Outside, at night, balancing on scaffolding with inadequate lighting. The combination of repetitive visual strain and terrible physical access completely defeated the human perceptual system. Human cognitive limitations are as absolute as the mechanical yield points of the aircraft itself. Disregarding these biological operating limits makes catastrophic failure an inevitable outcome.